Alright, so this is an MX650 Razor electric. This tire was no good. I didn't have these tire spoons at the time, so I just cut the old one off. I would just use the spoons, but so here's a couple of tips on how to do this. These are pretty much a must. So what you got to do is make sure on the tire there's a little arrow right here. Make sure that your tire is going forward, and then you'll want to make sure that your valve stem is aiming out, not on the sprocket side. So on the getting it back on steps, what I did was take, first step was to take the tube, got the old tube over here somewhere, take the tube and put baby powder all around it, baby powder inside of the tire, tuck the tire, or tuck the tube in the tire, and then what I did was I blew up the tube in the tire, and then that basically made it so it didn't get kinked and it was in the correct place. And then I took the valve stem back, or the you can unscrew that with one of these tools here. You just unscrew it and it comes out. It looks like one of these things here. And then that let the air back out of it, but it got it into position so it didn't get pinched. So pretend that's in. I'm trying to film this by myself. So you'll start to push this bead over top of the rim. I did it going on the disc brake side here, because on a real dirt bike typically you wouldn't have this, and you have the sprocket which you could cut your hand on. But the reason I did it this way is because the disc side is smaller, so you have more room to work with your tools. But you're gonna want, the hardest part I had was I didn't have a stand for the wheel when I had it off. Obviously you have to have the wheel off, which just comes off with loosening these two nuts, drop the wheel down and set it down, and it wants to wobble. So I used a couple of 2x4s on each side and then set the wheel that way it wouldn't tip. If you don't have like a proper stand, it really needed a second person, so I had my wife holding it. So what you'll do is get some dish soap and water and get the inner part nice and slicked up on either side. And so if this was the rim, pretend this is the rim, you're gonna push this inner bead down around as far as you can on the rim, and then once you can't go any further, you start to take these spoons, and when you shape, this is the shape you would go towards the rim, tuck it in the rim and go like this and pop it down, and then you would cycle it. So you do that one, and then you go over about 2 inches and pop it down, and then leave that one there, and you keep working your way around until that first bead is on. While you're doing it, you have to just keep making sure you're not gonna pinch this tube. You just keep moving it out of the way. And once you get the first bead on, I actually found the first one was harder than the second one for me. And I think it's just because you're trying to get the tool past this one down to the bottom and work it on. So once you got that on, oh, I kind of skipped a little step there. Before you put that first bead on, you'll want to get this aligned in your tire and put it through the spot in the rim. And if this was straight, you could put a nut on it to keep it from popping out, but this one is angled, so you can't. I just put the air valve on there, or the cap on. That way it's all lined up, and you'll want to have, obviously, this in alignment. And then you pop on that first bead, like I mentioned. From there, then you have your spoon facing this way, and you do the same thing. You hook under the rim, and pop it down. Alternate every 2. So, and I got it back on, and I went to air it up, and there was like a pretty good sized gap between the sidewall and the rim. So a trick you can do there is put a take the little stem out again with your tool to let the air out, or you could just sit here forever and hold the air out with a screwdriver or something. But then you put a ratchet strap on it, and that will squish the tire down. Then you put this back in and then blow it up full of air, and that creates more pressure, and it'll blow the sidewall out. And so you can see I got a nice tight fit now, which I was struggling to do. I did add more soap, you can see, to make it happen with the ratchet strap. That's pretty much the tips. The biggest tips were baby powder, the soap. You gotta have these tools, and the ratchet strap. It's a tough little tire, you can see. It's real stiff. It's got a lot of wires in the you can't see them real well, but they're there. But I think unless you have a stand would have been the biggest thing, you know, something to hold the tire better. Maybe like a 5-gallon bucket that was a little smaller diameter so you could sit in it.